Here at Psych with Mike, we are committed to delivering the best, clinically sound psychology information that we possibly can to our audience. Brett and I have decades of clinical experience as well as educational experience, and we want to make sure that we're able to deliver that to the audience and that always be free. So after 2 years, to be able to take the show to the next level, we are going to open ourselves up to advertising. But before that can happen, we need everybody who hears this message to follow the link that is on the show notes on the podcast page or is on the show notes in the YouTube. Click on that link and fill out a survey that is literally 10 seconds long, so it won't take you more than 10 seconds. Do it right now. I'll wait. Okay, so see, that was really fast and really easy, and it's going to help us to be able to attract advertisers to the show and be able to take the show to the next level. Thanks for listening, and we hope that you enjoy Psych with Mike. Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan. I'm here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Hello again.
Hey, so I was doing some warm-up exercises.
Good for you.
And you were saying to me that you hoped that was not recorded.
Well, because if you're professional, you don't have to do that stuff.
That's not true. If you are professional, you're professional, you definitely do that stuff. You do it off mic.
Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Yeah.
So, how have you been?
I've been great.
We've been talking today that in our lives, both of our youngest children have purchased their own homes and are moving within the next 2 weeks.
It's very exciting, but it also echoes the tick-tock.
I was just going to say, it makes me feel old.
Yeah. I was trying to say it in a more professional way.
Yeah, I mean, my son's been out on his own for, a while now, but for my baby girl to be out on her own, it just feels like, never thought I'd see the day.
I have a son that's turning 50 who's been out on his own this month for a long time.
Yeah.
And my youngest son has just bought his first house.
Oh, I almost said your son's name, but I cannot believe he is 50.
Neither can he.
And because, it's amazing because your oldest son is really, essentially, we could have been in high school together, he and I.
Yeah.
And yet I think of him as a kid. But then you say his age, and I'm like, oh, holy cow.
Yeah.
That's not a kid.
He's challenged that way himself.
Yeah. So.
Still sees himself as a lot younger.
Well, a lot of times people have difficulty with their own emotional regulation and they don't really understand why.
I'm not imputing that to him at all. I'm just saying he sees himself as being younger.
Yeah.
And I see myself as being older.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You see yourself as being older than you are?
I see myself as being old.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, you're not ashamed of how old you are?
Oh, no, I'm 73.
Yeah. And, no, you're going to be 73.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, because you're not 73 yet.
Yeah.
But you certainly perform like a very young 73-year-old.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, I do.
I don't mean that as a euphemism. But I'm just saying,
Thank God I am healthy.
You are extremely healthy, extremely active.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody...
Still have an inquiring mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody who met you, if you told them that you were 73, would think that was true.
No, actually, most people don't believe that.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't think so. Yeah. I remember when your wife had your 70th birthday, and we all went to your house.
Your short-term memory is that good?
Yeah. And we all went to your house, and I told my wife, I said, this is a milestone birthday for Brett, and so we're all going to go and have this birthday party. Okay. And she actually said, oh, is he 65?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, that's right.
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
Your wife's always been 5 years behind the times.
Yeah, well, she just was amazed that it was your 70th birthday. She did not experience you.
She remembers when I had her sister in class in high school as a student.
I know.
Yeah. Many years ago.
My wife went to the high school that you taught at, and you were I don't know whether it was famous or infamous. I guess it depended on what side of the fence you were on.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's not only that you taught her sister, it's that you were integral in some of the disciplinary action that her sister's first husband was a part of. Yeah.
We won't talk about
We won't talk about any of that. No. But yeah, so you actually had a very profound impact on my wife's life long before I knew her or I knew you.
Yeah.
Isn't that so odd?
It is a small world.
Yeah. I mean, we live in St. Louis, and for as big a place as St. Louis is, it's just so insular.
So I had your wife's sister in class as a student when I taught high school. Then I had you in class as a student when I taught graduate school.
Yep.
Then my wife, who is a teacher, had your son in her class.
In her third grade class.
And your daughter wasn't in her class, but was next door.
Next door in your wife's best friend's class.
Yeah.
So I know
we've known each other growing up.
We've been just crossing paths our whole lives. So one of the things that I love to do in therapy and as an educator is to talk about what is the biology of emotion, because I feel like that psychology is a strange science. It began as really a social science. It's called a soft science, but it fancies itself being a hard science. And yet we don't do a very good job of teaching the hard science or of using the hard science when we do therapy. And that's always been a fascinating paradox to me.
So, as I understand it, the difference between hard and soft sciences, the hard sciences do experiments and research which have to be replicable.
Yes.
If you do the same exact thing, it's like a recipe. If you follow the recipe exactly, you'll get the same results no matter where you are, what culture or country you live in.
Right.
If scientist A in England does an experiment, scientist D in Australia should be able to do the same experiment and get the same results.
Right.
The soft sciences don't have that replication or that precision.
They try. So you have internal validity, which is that the thing that you're trying to measure is actually the thing you're measuring, and then external validity, which is that you get the same results when on repetitive studies. So in the soft sciences, you have an example like the Bryce Harlow monkey experiment, or the I just blanked. Stanley Milgram social power experiments. Yep. And you try to replicate those, but because you're dealing with emotions rather than measuring titration of a drug through a blood system, exactly,
then you get different responses.
Right.
So some of the monkeys in the Bryce Harlow experiment didn't isolate, wither, and die in the same speed, in the same way that others did. They all eventually did. And those who survived because of a little stuffed doll that was put in the cage that they could climb up in the lap and hold. So then you draw conclusions about, well, what's going on here? We have a need for affection. We have a need to be held. We have a need to be loved. But those are all just extrapolations. And so the pure scientists or the hard scientists look at us and smile knowingly, saying, yeah, you guys are playing with yourself.
Right.
So that's a challenge in psychology. So now we have equipment, we have methodologies that allow us to measure brain waves, that allow us to identify places in the brain, that allow us to measure blood pressure change, all kinds of physiological things that we didn't have before. And so some in the field of psychology are moving into trying to do those kinds of studies where they can say, okay, if you're depressed, let's do 10 different brain scans over 10 different days and see where in your brain this is happening and how widespread it is. And we can map it. We can get a color chart and we can show you, hey, look here. How do we make that useful?
There are some futurists in the field of psychology that actually believe that we are within 5 years of being able to image the interaction of neurons at the synaptic level, meaning that we can actually map the flow of neurotransmitters across the synapse, that we may be 5 years away from that. Other people believe we may be 10, but everybody believes that we are within a few years, a handful of years, of being able to image that. That's going to change the field of psychology and psychiatry profoundly. But even now...
So I saw a study this week, or not a study, I saw an article this week that said in the very near future they're going to be able to put a USB port in your head and you can plug a thumb drive in, like for a language or data, or or to drain off some of the memories that are overcrowding.
So there was a company that, and I can't remember what the name of the company was, this was like 4 years ago, that was actually putting microchips, robots, into a solution and injecting them into people's brains, and they would actually attach to specific areas of the brain, and then they could manipulate them with radio
volunteers, right?
So Elon Musk, well, I don't know if they ever did it to people. So Elon Musk bought the company,
right?
And now that's exactly So Elon, he's getting. He says
that direction.
That we're within a handful of years of being able to access very specific areas of the brain, and to be able to import or input information directly into those centers. So if you had these microchips connected to the left temporal lobe, which is where language is on your brain, then you could essentially either plug a USB port in, or even through some kind of wireless technology, beam that information into your brain, and you wouldn't have actually studied a language, but you would know it, much like the Matrix.
Right.
So but to be able to do that, we're going to have to be getting closer to being able to image the interactions of those individual neurons. But one of the things that we can do today that is very hard science, and I don't think that we're doing a good enough job of promoting, is actually track the biological endocrine responses that are associated with emotion.
So if you could do that, then could you use some device to help people when they were struggling, like if they were suicidal, or if they were depressed, or if they were petrified with anxiety, to modify those emotions? You can change the endocrine system, make them flood the zone with cortisol, or some other positive affective experience, so that they didn't suffer? Is that the premise, or do we just understand?
We understand. I don't know if that would be. So let's talk about how the system works, and then we'll come back to that question. So basically, we have, based on the endocrine responses, we have 4 primary emotions. So glad, mad, sad, and scared. Originally, before we could track the endocrine responses, the way in which the basic innate emotions, the emotions you're born with, were tracked were through the facial expressions of infants. So when they tracked the facial expression of infants, they had 6 primary emotions: glad, mad, sad, and scared, surprise, and disgust. And now we associate the disgust and surprise with the endocrine responses of fear and anger, which makes a lot of sense. But based on those endocrine responses, what happens is that, now this is my philosophy, is that we can subdivide our emotions into positive emotions and negative emotions based on whether the endocrine response triggers an action that makes us feel better or makes us feel worse.
But 3 out of the 4, I would say, are mostly negative.
I know, you would say that. And that's because we don't do a good job of defining what the endocrine response is. So in the endocrine, so an example of a negative emotion would be, based on the feeling bad afterwards,
guilt.
Okay, so go. Glad, mad, sad, or scared?
Oh, scared.
Okay, so scared,
Yeah.
right. So what happens when a person gets scared? So when a person gets scared, what ends up happening is that the endocrine response is activated through the sympathetic nervous system and activates what's called the HPA network, so the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. It dumps adrenaline into the system. The adrenaline causes your body to produce toxins faster than your body can excrete them. Those toxins congregate in the connective tissue as lactic acid. So if you've ever been really scared and then you've been rubbery legged afterwards, that's because of the lactic acid that is in your connective tissue.
So I understand that this is endlessly fascinating to you.
Yeah.
It is not to me.
Okay.
My question is screaming in my head as you're talking is, how do I use that in therapy? How is that useful to me?
Okay.
To be able to say to somebody, oh, you got a lactic acid buildup in your butt.
All right, let's put a pin in that. We're going to run to our first break, and we will be back in just a second. Here at Psych with Mike, we are committed to delivering to you the best psychology information that we possibly can. And we want to make sure that that's always free. So we need everybody to go to the link that is in the show notes on the podcast page or in the show notes on the YouTube page and fill out a really quick, less than 10-second survey. That's going to help us to be able to attract advertisers to the show. That's going to let us take the show to the next level while still delivering the show in a free format. So please help us out. Share that information with everybody in your family, everybody that you know. The more responses that we get, the faster that we can get monetized, the faster that we can attract high-quality advertisers. We are committed to screening every advertiser that comes onto the show. So we're not going to be selling you things that we don't agree with or that we don't think are appropriate for the content of the show, but we do want to be able to upgrade the technical quality and the overall look of the show. So help us out. Go right now, click that link, fill out the survey, tell everybody you know to go and fill out the survey, and we really appreciate it. Thanks, and if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. All right, so we're back, and okay, so here's how I would use it. So let's simplify it down to when you get scared, the levels of cortisol, which is a stress-related hormone, in your body rise. That makes you feel bad.
Okay.
The same thing happens when you get what?
I don't know. I hate these.
Glad, mad, sad, or scared?
Glad.
Okay. When you get mad.
Yeah, mad.
So mad and scared are two sides of the same coin. Both of them are related to cortisol. Your cortisol levels go up when you get mad and when you get scared.
Okay.
Oxytocin, which is a pro-social hormone, gets delivered into the body when you get glad.
All right.
It also gets delivered into the body when you get sad. One of the most profound ways to use this information in therapy is to redefine for people that the evolutionary reason for sadness in human beings is to make us feel better. But we've perverted the perception of it and made it into a negative, and because we ruminate and because we can feed a thought back on itself, we bastardize the evolutionary reality of sadness into a negative. When you cry, tears of frustration, your tears are composed of 70% prolactin, which is a very stress-related hormone. We literally cry out stress through our tears. So sadness is actually one of the most profoundly positive emotional experiences that a person can have if you let it be. After all, when you get super happy, what do? You ever heard of tears of joy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually feel best when we experience sadness. So that's its evolutionary purpose. So the reason why we get sad is to be able to experience a loss, to process that loss, and then be flooded with all of these positive hormones that make us feel better. But we've been taught big boys don't cry, and that if you are feeling better after someone passes away, that's a sign of disrespect. It's ridiculous. It's programming that has no purpose and is actually anathema to the evolutionary reality of what sadness is. Sadness is a profoundly positive emotion if you let it be.
Well, I was never a Beatles fan.
Yeah.
But as I listen to all this stuff you're saying, what it sounds to me, reduce it down, is that it's all about interpretation, how you interpret the experience. So if you're self-limited or suffering from some experience that you have, if it's possible, then we need to work on redefining that experience and labeling it something else. So change from a red shirt to a blue shirt. So I may grieve the death of my father and have sadness because he died, and have anger because of unfinished business with him because he died. I can't finish it. So what you're saying is I need to reframe how I tell myself, what I tell myself about the death of my father, the absence of my father in my life. And if I can do that, then I won't suffer.
So what I would say is this, that you should redefine your experience of the sadness and to refine your perception of sadness.
Wash that man right out of my hair.
Not necessarily, but that you recognize that the process of being sad is to ultimately allow you to move through that period of loss and grief and feel better.
It's like doing the emotional laundry. You got to wash those clothes.
Yeah.
So when you do, they're cleaner. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that society has told us that sadness is a negative emotion. Biology tells us that sadness is a positive emotion and that we need to reconstitute the impression that we have of sadness. If we as a human society, as a human species, could redefine sadness and eliminate all of the negative connotations associated with it, we would be an emotionally healthier species. We would feel better. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so I had a client, young girl, 27, 8 years old, whose husband died unexpectedly in her arms. She buried him. She came home. She's hanging around the house. She's sleeping in his shirt, the shirt that he wore when he died, for weeks. She went to work. Several weeks later, she stayed home and grieved and had lost time and all that. Went to work. Her sister and her mother, intending to do good things, came in and cleaned out their house and took his clothes away, took the shirt she slept in away.
Horrible idea.
And she came home and was so violated by what they had done. How do I help her process this sadness and this rage towards her mother and sister and the loss of her husband? She's angry about him dying and angry with him for dying. But she couldn't own that at that time. How do I help her?
So, she's violated now twice. She's been a victim twice.
Absolutely.
She lost her husband, and then she was violated by her family. That was a horrible idea. So we don't even diagnose grief as pathologic until 12 months after the precipitating event. So you get a whole year, and these are just labels, so they don't really even mean anything. But you might be in a process of grieving for a year. So what I would say to her is, okay, you're 2 weeks out from having lost your husband. You are exactly where you need to be. If you're not further along the process, a year from now, we will revisit that when that time comes. But we're not going to talk about you should be out of your grief process.
We're not talking about you should be anything. We're going to talk about where you are.
Yeah.
You are feeling this.
You're where you should be.
Perfectly normal and appropriate for you to be feeling. Okay.
And it's absolutely a violation of your trust and of your sovereignty to have your mom come in and empty out your house. I don't care how well-meaning they are.
Right.
That's just a ridiculous thing to do.
Yeah.
That should never happen.
Oh, absolutely.
But during this period of grieving, it did.
And girl was trying to deal with it.
And so now you're talking about, now it's even more complex.
Yeah.
But if we eliminate mom coming and taking the stuff, and she's just lost her husband and she's sleeping in his shirt and people are telling her, don't sleep in his shirt. I'm saying, hey, you do what you do.
Absolutely.
You do whatever you want, right? Yeah. And we're just going to monitor the process. I'm not even concerned with where you are on the process until we're at least a year down the road. But what I am going to say to you is that your process of grief is designed to give you the opportunity to let go of this at an appropriate time of your choosing when it feels right for you and to feel okay with that.
So in the immediate moment, what we are doing is not solving anything.
Right.
We are just processing the experience and validating it. This is real. This is happening. This is appropriate. You are doing what we are designed to do.
Exactly.
And there will come a day when you're finished with this.
That's right.
And that will be appropriate too. It doesn't mean you didn't love him. Doesn't mean you don't remember him. But it means that you are finished with the grief.
Exactly.
About his immediate loss.
And all through that period of time, what I'm going to be saying is that the society tells you that sadness is a negative emotion. And what I am telling you is that biological science tells us that sadness is a positive emotion.
So don't fight it. Indulge it.
Indulge it.
Experience it.
Embrace it to the extreme, because you're not going to be ready to let it go until the emotion has processed.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're going to be sad until you're not.
Yeah.
And, if at the end of a year you're still debilitatingly sad, well, we're going to talk about maybe you're stuck and maybe we need to talk about, are you ready to move on? But we're not even going to worry about that for a year.
Okay. All right.
At least a year, right?
No, I think that's really appropriate. At least a year. Yeah.
But in the meantime, I am going to be recounting to you over and over again the fact that what society says about sadness is inaccurate. Biology tells us that sadness actually has a very different function in our human existence.
Yep.
And so, that's why I really think that it would be so positive for us to really promote the hard science of psychology and to really get into and admittedly, psychology is a brand new science. So we're only 100 years old. And so if we've evolved in 100 years from what seemed like metaphysical pseudo-spirituality to a point where we're on the verge of really being a hard science, I get it. That's just an evolution. But we're at a point now where we really can start to promote the hard science of psychology. And that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to predict every single human behavior. I'm not talking about B.F. Skinner behavioralism. You press button A, you get response X. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is we know some things about the biology of the human body, and we need to be promoting that as our informed opinion, not just what society says. And our biology tells us that sadness is a positive, maybe the most positive emotional experience.
So if you go down that road, you will reach a point where some psychologist is sitting in his office or psychiatrist sitting in the office saying, you just lost your husband. Let me give you 4 cc's of oxytocin.
Yeah.
You're really depressed. Let me give you 4 cc's of ketamine.
Mm-hmm.
You're really whatever. Let me give you 4 cc's of cocaine.
Yeah.
And we'll see where that goes.
Sure.
So people are going to be doing that.
Well, and then what I would say is that drug intervention is a temporary solution
at best. Absolutely.
And everybody says that. Even the drug manufacturers say that.
So if you read in conjunction with
inserts,
therapy.
Every single psychotropic medication says only to be used in conjunction with talk psychotherapy. But how many psychiatrists require that to continue your prescription? Almost zero.
Well, maybe they need some oxytocin.
Well, maybe they need some better information. Maybe they need. So, this is a pet
I
peeve
can
of
hear
mine.
that in your voice. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is we should be informed by what the biology of our human experience is. So I'm not saying, so if you lose somebody and somebody gives you some ketamine, you're going to feel better for 12 hours. You are.
Yeah.
But at the end of that 12 hours, you're not going to continue to feel better.
Right.
So we're not talking about these guys are going to be able to prescribe these medications as a cure. They're going to be able to prescribe them as a symptom depressant.
Yeah. Well, or as a bridge to say, well, you can take the weekend off.
Well, I mean, and maybe, and if you are so horribly sad, profoundly sad that you can't function, and your psychiatrist wants to give you some ketamine to be able to get through the weekend, I'm not saying I'm opposed to that.
Right.
I'm opposed to presenting that as a cure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
So hopefully this has been beneficial for everybody, and if you want to get a hold of us, you can do that through the website psychwithmike.com. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.